Since first airing over 8 years ago, nearly everybody who has seen Over the Garden Wall has loved it. There's something interesting to talk about in every single episode, but today, in a Halloween special that's only 6 months too early, let's take a deep dive into the episode that's always stuck with me the most, the ringing of the bell. In this video, we're gonna go through the quarter hour and discuss how it turns a seemingly filler episode into a bitter conversation about control.
Word. Ain't that just the way?
The episode begins shortly after the lullaby in Frogland, and fresh off the betrayal of Beatrice at Adelaide's. And accordingly, the generally upset Wirt reaches new levels of such, and is thus rather harsh towards Greg's questioning of where exactly he's going. Wirt reassures his brother that he has a plan for their safety, but the tone of the scene makes it clear that he's just as clueless as his brother, and that Beatrice's deception has him feeling as hopeless as ever. Wirt continues to neglect Greg as they continue to walk towards nowhere, but their stroll is interrupted by the collapse of a tree, which is quickly revealed to be the work of the woodsman. The woodsman attempts to take control of the situation, grabbing Wirt, but unfortunately for him, his efforts to try and guide the brothers towards safety and away from the beast end up futile, as Wirt, still convinced that the woodsman is out to get them, books it as soon as he can, rendering the woodsman's efforts to be rather useless. He attempts to use the last bit of control that he has to shout a warning into the distance, but the warning never reaches the boys, and he's quickly interrupted by the actual beast, who initiates a conversation off screen. As soon as they get away from the perceived threat, Wirt tells Greg,
"See? I got it under control. I don't need Beatrice."
Which should key you in on what this episode is about if my ramblings haven't yet. Wirt decides that the best course of action is to wait out the rest of the rainstorm in an abandoned house, a decision that Greg seemingly already sees the inevitable outcome of. Nevertheless, Wirt quickly makes the house a bit more lively by lighting some fires, as we get some of the fantastic Wirt and Greg shenanigans that fill up the entire miniseries. This is cut by Greg finding a batch of live black turtles in a barrel in the house, which quickly brings up the question of how exactly living creatures are being sustained in an abandoned building. Before Greg and Wirt have time to discuss this, the question answers itself as we get acquainted with the first new character of the episode, the sickly young girl Lorna. She immediately seems friendly, just like most of the characters in The Unknown, and somehow trusts that Wirt has good intentions, even after Greg falsely announces that they've
I'm here to burgle your turts.
Lorna quickly redirects the conversation to a warning, declaring that somebody known as Auntie Whispers is coming and begging the brothers to hide. They follow her advice, and in through the door comes Auntie Whispers, whose terrifying design immediately shifts the tone of the episode to that of horror. Tim Curry does a ridiculously good job bringing this horrifying character to life, giving a rather subdued performance that emphasizes the power of Auntie Whispers, who immediately showcases the fear that she holds over Lorna, as well as immediately detecting the presence of visitors in her home. She's even animated to look directly at the audience, as if she's cluing us in that she's just playing dumb with her adopted niece. After Lorna lies to protect the brothers, Whispers immediately sniffs it out, introducing us to the most important object of the episode, the titular bell. Using this object seemingly gives Auntie Whispers infinite control of Lorna, which she uses in a petrifying scene where she forces Lorna to point her in the direction of Wirt and Greg. Luckily, Whispers finds the turtles covering the brothers in the barrel and misinterprets them as the guest, quasi-apologizing for accusing Lorna of hiding visitors. Further heightening the tenseness of this scene is Auntie Whisper's next statement, in which she asks Lorna to
sort the bones of those who have been eaten here before,
clearly establishing the stakes for the brothers possibly getting caught. Before finally heading to bed, Whispers does one more thing, which is to use the bell once again to control her niece, this time asking her to clean the floor until it shines, a task that will seemingly take all night. Whispers justifies this act of cruelty by claiming that she's taking control of Lorna for her own good, as without work to keep her busy, evil spirits will drive her to wickedness. A statement that, especially given the dress and dialect of the pair, the audience is pretty much much forced to interpret as some kind of cultural freedom that Whispers fears will corrupt her pure adopted niece. Whispers finally actually falls asleep, allowing Lorna to call out her stowaways from underneath the turtles, kicking off the second half of the episode. Lorna and Wirt have a conversation that, besides just being immensely clever among rewatches, also fully establishes some of the details that I've just been glossing over, such as Auntie Whispers not being Lorna's real aunt, and the idea that Whispers' constant Wirt commands are a response to Lorna's illness. Wirt agrees that Auntie Whispers' behavior is clearly abusive, and thus decides to hatch a plan with Lorna to escape, as if the two of them work together on cleaning the floor, Lorna will be freed from her command earlier than anticipated, and able to escape before she's given another task. Both teenagers agree on this somewhat awkward scheme, and begin to clean together, sparking the beginning of a definitively corny but undeniably sweet duet between the two. While the scene is partially played for laughs, I also think it's important in establishing that Wirt is able to form another connection with somebody after Beatrice. After her betrayal, Wirt has nobody in the unknown that he actually has a connection with, as his relationship with his brother continues to strain. Therefore, the connection seen between Lorna and Wirt gives him some hope that he won't toil in the unknown forever, thus giving him back some of the confidence that he was completely out of at the beginning of the episode. Either way, the scene is sweet and is interrupted way before it has time to become stale by Greg's frog, currently going by Dr. Cucumber, waking up Auntie Whispers. She immediately reaches for her bell to try and control Lorna and prevent her from achieving freedom, but she fails to find it, allowing the trio to escape. Unfortunately for the brothers though, there's still 3 minutes of runtime left, and that's enough time for Auntie Whispers' warnings to come true, as Lorna's illness ends up being a curse, and Whispers' claim that Wirt keeps the evil spirits from coming within Lorna ends up being not metaphorical. Greg does a great job summarizing it for anybody in the audience who may be confused.
Oh, for some reason I thought that old lady was the people eater, but it was Lorna all along. It just goes to show you stuff.
And we get some ridiculously well-animated horror sequences. The way that Lorna is drawn feels completely alien to the general gothic atmosphere of the show, and gives a sense of unnatural terror to the entire scene. Demon Lorna chases the half-brothers into a pond, and seemingly prepares to devour the pair, but luckily Dr. Cucumber, the frog if you've forgotten, happens to swallow Auntie Whisper's bell, which Wirt is eventually able to, after wrestling it from his brother, use to cast the demon out of Lorna. The irony that the bell's control over Lorna was initially portrayed as Lorna's oppressor and ends up being her savior is not lost on the brothers, but either way, after this point, Auntie Whispers and Lorna end up reconciling as the episode ends. And wait, why didn't Auntie Whispers just use the bell to cast the demon way before Greg and Wirt even got there? And wait, how does Whispers even have a bell that happens to control the demon that lives inside of her adopted niece? And one final wait, why is Whispers' immediate reaction to the news of Lorna's exorcism to begin to cry at the loss of being able to remain in her life, almost as if she treasured the control that the bell gave her over her adopted niece? She never thanks Wirt and Greg for managing to cast the demon out of Lorna, and while I don't want this to become a theory video, I think it's really fascinating that the show never decides to really answer these questions and leaves the idea that Auntie Whispers intentionally kept Lorna ill for a sense of control as a possibility. Lorna's immediate embrace of her aunt feels like one made out of ignorance and not forgiveness, as if she feels indebted to her aunt, allowing her control over Lorna to continue even though it's no longer technically forced. It's a scene that's meant to be felt as awkward and uncomfortable, even if the show presents it as a familial reconciliation. Wirt and Lorna's goodbyes are bittersweet, which from Wirt's perspective is very little sweet and a good chunk of bitter. Lorna seems sweet in her gratitude towards the pair, and Whispers decides to actually help Wirt, warning him of Adelaide, her sister, and how she cannot be trusted. This obviously has the opposite effect in Wirt, who is immediately reminded of the events of Beatrice's betrayal as he sinks back into the state of depression from the beginning of the episode. He and Greg discuss where they're going next, and Wirt admits that he doesn't have a plan, concluding that the situation and his brother's life is out of his control. The Beast and the Woodsman have a really interesting conversation that I would love to get into, but I would rather not derail this video right at the end, so I'll skip to the end of the episode, where the Beast states that Wirt will ultimately surrender to this feeling of uselessness and hopelessness.
There is only me. There is only my way. There is only the forest, and there is only surrender.
While this episode may be the largest diversion from the main plot throughout the miniseries, it serves immense importance in the characterization of Wirt when it comes to his ability to form relationships, as well as creating a really interesting conversation about the nature of control. Lorna benefits greatly from her adopted aunt taking control of her life, so much that she runs back to it even after the curse is lifted. Meanwhile, when Wirt feels like as if his life is out of his control at the end of the episode, it completely breaks him. Neither character is right or wrong in their assessment of their respective situations, even if it feels like both of them are perhaps a bit underinformed. Ultimately, the ringing of the bell asks the question of whether or not being controlled should instill security or fear, and instead of answering it, leaves it fittingly unknown. Anyway, I've hit my quota of dramatic statements in this video, so I guess I'll end it here. If you have any ideas for stuff you want to see me cover, please scream it at me in the comments or at Twitter, preferably with as many exclamation marks as possible. Either way, this has been AmpleSamuel, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks with a video that is hopefully less pretentious. Thanks for watching.